Hello and welcome to Across the Balkans. I'm Nafisa Latic. Great to have your company. In Romania, presidential candidate frontrunner Călin Georgescu will not be allowed to run again in the vote set for May. Georgescu was banned after the intelligence agency revealed that he was allegedly backed by Russia through 800 TikTok accounts, leading to the annulment of the first round of elections by the Constitutional Court in December. He is backed by conservative and far-right groups in Romania, which went out to support him. Georgescu has been critical of NATO and the EU for what he claims is a lack of freedom and free speech.
Deci, da, am greșit. Și noi că am lăsat 35 de ani totul în seama altora. A Uniunii Europene pentru bani, a NATO pentru apărare, a Statelor Unite ale Americii pentru a ne salva chiar și din propriile alegeri. Așa am ajuns să depindem de alții și acum ne-am trezit că nu suntem în stare să ne decidem singuri.
I have a great panel today with me to discuss all of this. I'm joined from Bucharest by Ramona Ioana Brunsils. She's a member of the Assembly of Deputies of Romania for the Alliance for the Union of Romanians party that organized the protest. And from Paris we have Oana Pompescu-Zamfir. She's a former State Secretary of Romania for EU Affairs and currently carries out research projects for the European Council on Foreign Relations. A very warm welcome to the program to both of you. Ramona, let me start with you. What's your reaction to the court's decision to ban Georgescu from running in May?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Of course that the party that I represent fully disagrees with the decision that was given by the Constitutional Court of Romania. And this is because, in our view, on the 6th of December, when the presidential elections were annulled, then the state and the Constitutional Court made a huge abuse and basically gave a huge hit to democracy in Romania. So what happened yesterday was basically the confirmation of the same thing, that democracy in Romania is in a huge danger, that the principles that lay at the base of free elections are clearly not being respected anymore in our country, and this, of course, that worries us a lot. At the same time, the decision that was made yesterday represents a very dangerous thing to refer to in the future. So a very dangerous precedent in our history and constitutional history in Romania, because in the future, you never know when, in 4 years, in 5 years, somebody could try again to run and the Constitutional Court would refer to the decision that was made yesterday. So that's why today my party announced that we are in a parliamentary strike. As you see, I have this white band on my hand, and this is because we basically fully reject what happened, and we are determined to fight against these decisions, and of course to enroll anyway and to run for office on behalf of all the sovereignist forces in Romania and make sure that we will win the elections.
Okay, I'll come to your next steps a little bit later. I want to bring in Oana now. Oana, what do you make of the way the Romanian officials handled this crisis? And now we see in some way the closure when it comes to this Călin Georgescu story.
Absolutely. Well, I think, first of all, we need to distinguish between Romanian officials, let's say the political establishment, the institutional establishment, and the justice system in Romania. So when it comes to the Romanian authorities, I think it's regrettable that this was not prevented, rather than coming to a point where we needed to annul an election. But once this has happened, the Constitutional Court is a body that pertains to the justice system in Romania, is the defender of constitutional order. It's made up of judges appointed by multiple political parties with a very balanced composition. So I think the decision itself is above any doubt. And then on top of that, we're not talking banning someone for, let's say, his opinions. And this is why the Alliance for the Unity of Romanians was allowed to run in parliamentary elections, despite the fact that it is itself a far-right nationalist party. Its leader, Mr. George Simion, ran in the election in November, despite the fact that he also supported Călin Georgescu now. So it's not about Romania banning even radical leaders from running. This is part of democracy. We're talking here about a guy who actually conspired with a foreign power to overthrow democracy and to overthrow the constitutional order in Romania, who broke every electoral law possible, from illicit funding to manipulation of social media algorithms. And this is not just something that Romanian authorities say. The same features in reports by the French authorities, by the Italian authorities, that have in their turn found the same evidence of wrongdoing on the part of Mr. Călin Georgescu and his campaign. So to allow him to run would have meant to allow a candidate to break the constitution, to break electoral law, and to further help undermine the constitutional order if he was elected president. So I believe this fully protects democracy rather than undermine it.
Ramona, so what do you make of the evidences presented by intelligence agency pointing to the fact that Russia allegedly financed Georgescu's campaign through more than 800 accounts on TikTok?
Well, you see, this is exactly the issue, and that's the main reason why we fully disagree, and we consider that this decision of the Constitutional Court was abusive, at least abusive, and of course unconstitutional, because in none of the reports that were presented, even in the highest council of the country with attributions on the defense side, no clear proofs, no clear evidences were ever presented. I mean, the reports really looked extremely superficial, if I could say so. Therefore, exactly because they didn't come with proper proofs, with proper evidences, they only came with speculations. And because they were not able to answer any of our questions since December, when this situation started in our country, that's why, of course, that is very, very hard for us to agree with anything that's being said now and with anything that's being reproached to Mr. Călin Georgescu. I feel pretty sorry that Mrs. Oana Popescu, who's in this show, she referred to him as to a guy. You know, I think that we still have to give the proper respect to people who are basically voted by a few millions of people in Romania. So since the elections were annulled in Romania, people are on the streets. They claim that their voting right was basically cancelled. They don't trust anymore the Romanian authorities and the public institutions. We live in a very tensioned climate here, and
yes, and
I don't
we've
think
covered
that this
that.
helps anybody.
We've covered that. Oana, obviously, you know, Romania is a NATO and EU country, but it's the first EU country that actually annuls its election. Shouldn't its electoral system and institutions be more protected when it comes to these kind of alleged attacks that we are talking about?
Yes, absolutely. And I think we're not really talking about the electoral system here. I think we're talking about the national security system. And I think Mr. Călin Georgescu should have been stopped months before his attempted coup was close to coming to fruition. So I believe, unlike when Mrs. Bruinstiles was just saying, that there is plenty of evidence, although there is an ongoing investigation still, but we have already seen that Mr. Georgescu was closely associated with mercenaries in whose homes There were stocks of ammunition found, a lot of money, a lot has been already demonstrated about the existence of illicit funding schemes amounting to millions of euros. The connections that Călin Georgescu had were also with people who were working to completely undermine the constitutional order in Romania and to effectively mount a coup d'etat, overthrow institutions, change the country's name, symbols, and so on and so forth, and regime. All of these things should have been seen and monitored by the authorities way before the election in the last autumn. So I do hope that moving forward, this is going to be a model for best practices throughout the EU. However, the challenge that I see is that unfortunately there are very few European countries that can say that Russia is an external threat only, because already Russian links are so deep within our countries, and that works the same for Germany or for France or for the UK as it does for Romania. So it is very difficult in a democracy to essentially monitor the illicit activities of your own citizens and take proper measures when they amount to a threat to national security by conspiring with a foreign power.
Ramona, who is likely to be a new candidate in May, as Georgescu has already called on his supporters not to protest and stand by a new candidate? Do you know, do we have any names at this point?
Currently, we do not have a new name. Of course, that the new candidate on our behalf will be agreed with Mr. Georgescu, and we will make sure that this candidate will really represent the sovereign parties in Romania. But if you allow me, I would like just to refer to something. So it's pretty hard to believe any of the stories that are being presented now about Călin Georgescu or about any other person or political candidate in Romania. Why? Because I can tell you from the inside that about our party and about our leader, for instance, there were stories, similar stories being said before. He was accused of being a Russian spy, a Russian agent. He was accused, we were all accused of being extremists, pro-Russian forces, so on and so forth. So knowing exactly that we have nothing to do with Russia and knowing what we've been through and how many accusations we've been facing, it's pretty hard now to believe the same story, even if it's related to somebody else, without being presenting with clear evidences.
Yeah, but you know, your country's intelligence agency says they have evidences that Georgescu was financed by Russia. So would you support?
But were never presented.
Were never presented.
These evidences were never presented. They were just mentioned superficially in their reports, but never really presented. And you know, it's very easy to compromise somebody.
If these arguments are presented in the near future, if investigation continues, in that case, would you condemn foreign countries intervening in Romania?
Yes, of course, I mean, this is very clear because we are a European country. We respect this status of our country. We are a NATO member and we respect this as well. So we fully disagree and we don't want to be in the situation in which a different state gets involved in our internal affairs. So we will, of course, condemn something like this. But you see, when there are a few months and since the entire thing started and they didn't come with any clear and concrete answers, they didn't come with the proofs and evidences, it's pretty hard for us to believe because it's so easy, and we know from our recent history in Romania, it's so easy to compromise somebody if you want. You just invent basically a story and then you start to create and to put the puzzle pieces all together.
Okay,
We've seen these kind of cases and we can't really go along with them.
Okay, Oana, I have enough time just for one question. I want to ask you, what can we expect in May? Is it likely to see, again, this growing ideological battle between, inside Romania between pro-EU forces and some more, let's say, nationalist factions, as we've seen in November?
Yeah, it's actually possible, but I wouldn't define it as a clash between, let's say, nationalist pro-Russian forces and pro-European. I think a lot of Mr. Călin Georgescu's electorate doesn't even necessarily side with his beliefs. It's mostly the divide is between people who are very angry at the performance of the political elite, the quality of governance over the recent years, over the disconnect between the country's significant macroeconomic growth and the way this has translated into the quality of life and prosperity for each and every individual. And then these people being angry are willing to embrace radical ideas. And I think this is what explains Mr. Georgescu's success and the Sovereignist Party's success, not really an ideological orientation, because a majority of Romania's population, even of Mr. Georgescu supporters, still, according to every poll, overwhelmingly prefer the country to be an EU and NATO member and remain faithful to its Euro-Atlantic orientation. I do believe, however, that a lot will depend also on what the mainstream political parties put on the table. Will they be able to present a credible candidate? So far, we don't have very strong candidates on the pro-European side. And again, that leaves a lot of room for the nationalists and the sovereignists. So it will depend on how this is handled. And it will also depend indeed on how convincingly the evidence of Mr. Georgescu's wrongdoing is presented. I do believe that we have already seen an abundance of it. It pertains to the proper functioning of the justice system in a democracy, that you cannot reveal all the elements of an investigation while it is ongoing. But indeed, at the end of it, I think the communication of such evidence needs to be crystal clear for all of these doubts to be removed.
Oana, Ramona, I guess all three of us agree on that. We need to have all these things clarified in the near future. I want to thank you both for being our guests on Across the Balkans and sharing your thoughts.